Kia ora, hello and welcome to our podcast, Cry, Laugh, Eat, Making Friends with Your Emotions. And thank you for joining us. My name is Ruth.
Ayup, if you live in Yorkshire, I'm Helen. We're excited to share with you how you can become friends with your emotions. In our podcast, we focus on 6 core emotions. The emotions we talk about are fear, sadness, disgust,
Yippee.
anger, happiness, and surprise. Each episode, we take one of the 6 core emotions and quote it directly from our book, Making Friends with Your Emotions. As we share, we invite you to think about your experiences with the emotion and look for its unique message just for you. The emotion we're talking about in this episode reminds me of a time when we lived in a dumpy old house because we couldn't afford anything else. When I would walk down to the bathroom at night, there would be a squelch and a slime, and I would squeal in disgust. When I turned the light on, what did I discover but big, fat, slimy, squishy slugs? And from our book today, we are shining the light on the emotion disgust.
It's funny because when you mentioned that, the big, squishy, slimy slugs, I just know my grandsons would have loved it.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting and fascinating thing about disgust, that what disgusts one person doesn't necessarily disgust another. Did you know that disgust was once labelled the forgotten emotion of psychiatry? That's an interesting term. I've often thought about it and thought, why would they call it the forgotten emotion? And I suppose it's because the other emotions like anger and fear and happiness, they get a lot of attention. But we don't often think about disgust and how it impacts on us. And there is a ton of learning and growing to be gained from understanding this particular emotion. And there's a lot more to it than we give it credit for.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating when you explore disgust. And there are many reactions we can have in this emotion, disgust. And some of the feelings that accompany disgust are these: repulsion, feeling disturbed, offended, uncomfortable, loathing, dislike, disapproval, feeling sickened, or feeling shame.
As with all emotions, disgust can be felt with varying intensities, from a very mild dislike or offence or disturbance to intense and extreme loathing or shame or dislike.
As Ruth said, there are levels of intensity related to disgust. And some of those words that came out about shame and disapproval and feeling offended and loathing, if you feel these at a high level and you notice that it's interfering with your everyday life, if it's impacting negatively on your relationships or your work, this can be a really hard way to live. And we invite you and encourage you to seek professional help to find the tools that will help you.
So in this episode, what we want to explore is how disgust can be a friend to us. When disgust is introducing itself to you in our book, it says the following thing, quote, "I am here to alert you when something is unpleasant or unhealthy," unquote. Even just in that notification or that alert, disgust is a friend.
Ruth and I have had quite a bit of laughter discussing disgust. And at the same time, as we've discussed it, we've realized the depth and importance of this little emotion. We think of him as a superpower. And to keep things simple today, we want to share with you 3 core things that we've determined disgust offers us.
So if disgust was a superhero, the following three things would be its superpowers.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to start off with the first one. And these are the things that we've discovered. You may discover other things too, and we would love to hear from you if you find that there are other super tools or powers that disgust utilizes. So the first thing, and this is what makes it a friend to you also, is we've called it the preserver. Ooh. A preserver is a person or thing that maintains something in its original or existing state or condition.
That's great. So how can we relate that to disgust?
How does disgust preserve, and what does it preserve?
So we determined together that disgust helps you to set and maintain boundaries, preserve and maintain boundaries. To help explain that a little, a boundary is knowing what's important to you, knowing what you need, and then determining how a healthy boundary can protect what's important to you and what you need. To try and explain that a little, for example, there was a time that there was someone in my life who would continually say things that were quite hurtful, that went against the way I think and do things. And I had pretty much put up with that. And just being a nice person, so I thought what was happening is that person was actually violating my boundaries. I perhaps didn't understand that then, but that's exactly what was happening. There came a day where this person said one too many things, and I actually stood up to them and told them that is so not okay with me. On that day, I was listening to that little superhero, Disgust, who was letting me know this is not okay. This has crossed your boundaries.
Someone had violated your boundaries and you felt offended and disturbed. It was letting you know this is not acceptable.
That's right. If we go back to what I said about boundaries, it's knowing what's important to you. So what was being said clashed with everything that was important to me. And what did I need? I needed it to stop because it was very degrading to me. So, knowing what I needed helped me to be able to put that boundary in place. Listening to that feeling inside me, which I now know is that little emotion giving me the alert, this isn't right. This is really uncomfortable. It's disturbing. Then I was able to think about what's important, what do I need, and then name my boundary and say it. Preserve and protect my boundary, yes.
And I suppose if, as a preserver, disgust was to say something to you, it would say, the more you ignore, the more you accept.
That is so true. The more we let things go, the more we ignore it, the more we accept it when it never was okay in the first place.
So you can see how great a friend disgust is as a preserver. The second superpower, you could say, that disgust has is, we've called it the buffer, capital B, the buffer. A buffer is a person or a thing that reduces a shock or that forms a barrier between something that you don't agree with or that's incompatible to you or antagonistic and the things that you value. So it's like someone that comes in between you and something that is horrific to you. And if you can imagine, they stand between you and they have both arms out, one hand touching the whatever it is that's unpleasant or the unhealthy thing. It stands between you.
It's great. If it was to say anything, it would say, keep your distance. And here's where the buffer helps you to protect your values. It gives you space between the thing that's unhealthy, unpleasant, or offensive and you. It puts a space between it. And to try to give you a picture of that, have you ever seen a boat as it's coming into moor at a jetty? It puts out, they're called fenders, but they're big rubber protectors that hang off a rope, and they drop them off the side of the boat. So when it comes into the dock or the mooring, the boat doesn't scrape and bash on the side of the jetty, and it protects the boat. That is just like disgust. It's that little buffer, that little fender between you and the unhealthy thing, person, situation, whatever it is.
Ultimately, as a friend, disgust is a protector. That's the third one. It's a protector or a friend that says very immediately, very clearly, back off. And I really love that because I've got a sister who's like that, and I just adore her, a younger sister. She will jump in and defend you and protect you to the hilt. I'm sure a lot of you have a friend who is similar to that, and you really appreciate them. They're the ones that stick up for you and protect you and jump in, and they're not afraid of anything. Disgust is that friend as an emotion. In rounding up, I just want to let you know that I've always had this little excitement and favoritism toward the emotion disgust, and I've always seen it as, I don't know why, but actually quite funny and full of mischief. But I now see it also as something much more significant. You know, when I think about it as a preserver and a buffer and a protector from things or people that are unpleasant or unhealthy for me, it takes things to a whole new level.
Me too.
And I appreciate it more.
Yes, and we were just talking when we pressed pause. We've talked a lot about this emotion. We don't want to make this episode overwhelming, so we're going to leave it here because there's so much to think about already. When we get to the emotion disgust in another few weeks' time, we'll take another element of the emotion and explore that.
How it affects your mind, your heart, your body, why it's there in different ways. So if you want to know more about disgust and the other emotions, we invite you to buy our book entitled Making Friends with Your Emotions. It's a really simple 15-minute read maximum, and yet it has a lifelong impact if you just think about each line and how it relates to you.
Thanks for joining us today. It's been great to have you with us. You can find links to our book and to our website in the show notes. And we'll be coming back to the emotion discussed in 5 weeks' time. But we will be back next week with another emotion.
Anger, I think it is.
Yes.
Give yourself the gift of time. It's free. And we'll see you again, hopefully, next week.
Bye now. If you feel you have... Here we go.
Take 2. Thank you for sharing that really important message, Helen.
That's all right, love. How's that, Ruth?
I don't know.
It's about time, you know.
Oh, my goodness.